familiar with the bills that are two serious bills that went to the state legislature having to do with teaching of alternative theories of the beginning of life to natural evolution. Now, I don't know what your church's position is on alternative explanations to the beginning of human life to the scientific theory of natural evolution. What is your church's position?
My personal position, my church is in an endeavor to be open. Pretty much people carry their own belief sets within it. My own personal opinion is that evolution was a pattern of life's creation on Earth. The age of the Earth is undeniably in the billions of years. The age of the universe is undeniably in the billions of years. And the creation depicted by the empirical method in science is a grander and richer thing than the children's story that people perceive from Genesis. And I say children's story, not saying that Genesis is a children's story, that they have picked the surface veneer of Genesis 1 and 2 and made it into a fond tale to reassure themselves.
They calculate from the Bible how many years ago this began, and then they tell the story of how human life began, and at the same time all life simultaneously. And there are people, who like to talk about the talking serpent. Mm-hmm. You're saying those are what, allegories, that they're not to be taken?
Well, some of them are allegories, but some of them are completely different than that. I mean, for example, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are two different accounts of creation. Genesis 1 is generally considered to have been written by the priestly, so the Levitical scribes at the time of the temple. Genesis 2 is a much older tale, much older tale. And the feeling of them is completely different. Genesis 1 is this grand account of the Spirit hovering over the waters of creation and man and woman created simultaneously. In Genesis 2, God is walking around in the garden and doesn't know what's going on, has to ask what's happening, and Eve is made from Adam's side. Well, it says side. It's plura, if I remember, is the Septuagint word for it. It can either mean ribs or rib or side or whatever.
All right,
but either way, they're different tales.
But you call that a children's story.
No, right? I don't call that a children's story. I say that taking that as a literal... we are used in the modern day to having history books written for us and having textbooks written for us. This is not the way that the ancients understood the world. They had a richer depth of meaning in what they were writing, and they weren't writing it merely to tell you a string of facts.
All right,
they were writing it to convey a truth about the human condition.
You're familiar with the current usage of intelligent design as opposed to creationism?
Oh, yes.
And would you find that supportable to be taught in public schools?
I think that's beyond the remit of a science class in a public school.
All right, so it could be taught in a religion course,
yes,
but not in a science course.
Yeah, I think basically you
are
teach
you
the
aware
facts.
that this effort to get to question evolution, and they were also questioning global warming and cloning, and that this was passed through the education committees in the state. And it's gone to the Senate and the House, and I think the House has already passed it. It has every possibility of becoming law, which from our point of view is a terrible backward step to allow questioning of science because of some religious concepts.
I see it as a backward step from a Christian point of view as well, actually, that I do believe that if you teach somebody something which is demonstrably false, then they will ally that to the core of their Christian teaching. And when they come to an age where they can actually question that, they'll throw the baby out with the bathwater. So it serves no Christian
They would
purpose.
say, if you gave us bad information about this, then
you probably gave us bad information about other things
else
as well, which is why a pastor or a Christian leader has a duty to be informed.
All right. Have you discussed this matter, in your sermons or with your people?
I certainly have in Bible study. It's not always popular, but I have to be authentic about what I believe.
All right. Now, the other thing that is working its way through the legislature is vouchers for only for New Orleans, because they say New Orleans has got some bad schools. Now, and it's for the early grades, and they're going to provide money to the schools, most of which are the Catholic parochial schools. Mm-hmm. Who else? There are not that many other private schools. And that is probably going to make its way through the legislature, which is also unconstitutional. State taxpayers' money going into a parochial school has got to be violation. So how do you feel about that?
Well, there's another thing, of course, that the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church in the late 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, accepted evolution as the way creation happened.
Yes.
Therefore, presumably, by pumping money into the parochial schools, they're also going to encourage the teaching of evolution.
But they're also going to teach the children religion.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
And that's not going to be separated. So it's a violation of separation of church and state.
I also think it's partially a violation of the role of a parent. The parents have, of course, the right to send their children to whatever school they want.
Absolutely.
But the state, I do believe, should be neutral in that process.
And a serious part of that is that the money that they're going to then provide for the private schools is coming out of the public schools.
Absolutely.
Which needs every dollar they can get.
Absolutely.
And if they expect those bad schools to get better, how do they get better if you take some of their money away? So
absolutely.
It's but this is happening at this,
Choice tends to go to those with the biggest resources anyway, even when it's a voucher system. You can top up vouchers to ensure you get the school you want.
Apparently, resources can influence many things, including who gets elected to public office. Well, we have just a minute or two left. What would you like our audience to know that we may not have already mentioned?
Oh, where would I begin? Well, I mean, the issue of Christianity and evolution, it's one of those things which is a vexed topic, and I think we end up being forced to defend something we don't believe on both sides of the argument. I firmly believe that the richness of creation and the size of creation and the vastness of the universe is a greater testimony of God's wonder than, taking Genesis 1 and 2 as just a list of facts, when I do believe what it does is tell us something very profound about the human condition. Something we might not want to hear, actually, but it's not a history book.
Well, what you just talked about, the vastness of the universe, Albert Einstein, who was an atheist, but he did say that, that as far as he was concerned, God was the awesomeness of the universe, which did not mean it was someone that he was going to talk to, in prayers. But his description was not that different from yours.
Well, that's not my description of God. That's my description of creation.
Of creation.
Albert Einstein also got it wrong over quantum physics. He says God doesn't play dice, but it turned out that God did play dice.
In quantum physics.
Yes, absolutely.
All I can say right now, because our time is up, that we want to thank you, Reverend Crawshaw.
Thank you very much.
I think we've had an interesting half hour.
Absolutely.
Thank you, folks, for watching.